he had a conciliatory tone. He said he was going to take charge of this issue now. You know, amusingly, people in the Likud has said he'd been absent for the whole 3 months of these protests. They were worried he'd been kidnapped and that what they were looking at was a body double. He says those days are over. He's going to be in charge from now on. His problem has been that he's got a conflict of interest. He's being tried for corruption. It's very hard for him to take over a judicial process. But last night, the first of the bits of legislation that was involved meant that it'll be much harder to remove a Prime Minister from office, to declare him unfit to serve. And he referred to that and said, now, you know, after this legislation, my hands are no longer tied. You know, I have no conflict of interest. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to take charge. So quite a slap in the face for the Attorney General, who did tell him he did have a conflict of interest, and would be interesting to see what the courts say about that. One of the issues that everybody is very concerned about is an override clause that would allow the Parliament to override the courts. And he said that might be fixed. But if we're just looking at the legislation that's meant to be enacted within what's left of this winter session of the Parliament, that's about a week or so, by the end of this month, all that legislation goes ahead. More legislation that pertains to Netanyahu personally, relating to gifts to public servants, including the Prime Minister, and, of course, the composition of the judges, the most controversial perhaps of all the bits of legislation, the composition of the committee that chooses the judges, that's going ahead. So despite the conciliatory tone, if you look at the tin tax, what's going to be different by the end of this week? The answer is nothing.